Plushie Palace by Nick Rock. One is never so dangerous when one has no shame than when one has grown too old to blush. The Marquis de Sade. Chapter 1. Damn, I hate puppets. I don't trust them. As far as I'm concerned, if you don't have a heart, you're incapable of feelings, emotions, conscience. Being without a conscience is a dangerous thing. I've never met a puppet with a heart. Nothing but fluffed cotton under their spongy chests. In my line of work, you see how awful mankind can be to itself, but the most heinous crimes I've seen are committed by damn puppets. It used to be I didn't have to deal with them. I worked homicide, homo sapien, the murder of people. But then the Felt Fairness Act was passed and homicide absorbed puppicide into its department. Something about how all murder should be treated equally, that by having a separate department for the killing of a puppet, it would somehow be taken less seriously. Maybe they have a point there. I can only speak for myself. But to me, burning a puppet is no different than burning a pair of socks. Except that socks don't scream as they burn to ash. Looking through the two-way mirror at that fuzzy purple perp, I couldn't help but wonder, would it scream when it was tossed into the incinerator? I let out something between a huff and a laugh. Of course it would. They all did.
So, what do you think, Decker?
Chief Mort had appeared at my right side. I must be slipping. I didn't even notice him walk up. Luckily, my nerves are still stony, so I didn't flinch. Pretty open and shut. The perp had the murder weapon on him, plus a bag of muck. My eyes were cold as I stared in at the thing fidgeting in its seat. That's our killer, all right.
Well, you go in there and get me that confession. No rough stuff, Decker, I mean it. He has his rights.
If you say so. Leaving the chief, I had to walk through two sets of door, almost like an airlock on a space station. The little room between the doors was only about the size of a closet, but I supposed it was necessary to make space for the lining of the puppet interrogation room. Some type of mixture of lead and copper. I never understood the science behind it, but the mix did something to the biology of puppets that kept them from performing any special abilities they may or may not have, dampening it somehow. After waiting a moment, I walked through the second door and into the specially designed interrogation room. As soon as I did, the thing stiffened comically. Everything they do is comical. Some people say that they can't help it, that they are just naturally a goofy species. Personally, I don't buy it. It's all one big manipulation technique. They think if they can make you giggle, it will engender some sort of sympathy or camaraderie. Not me. I've never laughed at a puppet in my life. I sure as shit wasn't going to start now. I closed the door behind me and walked to the opposite side of the metal table in the center of the room. It started shaking in an exaggerated fashion, like some sort of character in a Chuck Jones picture. It may have thought it was being cute. I thought it was being smug. I refused to look into its oversized googly eyes, which were bouncing up and down. Got any special abilities or magical qualities I should know about?
Nope, sir.
Its deep, gravelly voice like nails on a chalkboard. No funny stuff?
Nope, sir.
That's good. That's real good. Although, even if you did, we had this interrogation room specially built for your kind. Keeps your, talents in check.
I don't got no talents.
For the first time, I looked up into its face. Or what passed for a face. This particular puppet was what was known as a fuzzy. Fuzzies had hardly any shape to them at all, just amorphous blobs of fur like shag carpeting wrapped around a vaguely humanoid shape. It scrunched its face up into a sour expression, as if it had just smelled rancid garbage. I could tell it was frustrated, squirming in its seat at the fact that it couldn't make me laugh with its assortment of theatrics. I smirked a bit, but made it as clear as possible that it was a smirk for me, not for him. I straightened myself and pulled a file folder out from its hiding place tucked into my right armpit. I opened it and began thumbing through the pictures that were inside. In the movies, they always show crime scene photos in black and white. Even in the modern day movies, it was a trend that seemed to continue. I can assure you the real things are very much in color. The deep brown-reddish pool of this poor sap's blood popped from each page. He was lying on his right side in front of a dumpster, his arm awkwardly flung out above his head, his eyes half-open slits of stillness. As I looked through them, I began to shake my head slowly. I gotta say, things don't look too good for you, my friend. Witnesses place you at the scene, weapon on your person, big bag of muck.
Mucks is perfectly legals.
Yeah, well, Congressman Billy Winks is looking to change all that, and rightfully so. A dab of muck in your fur and you puppets are 3 sheets to the wind.
Billy Winks is a joke.
Really? No, I thought all you guys supported your first puppet politician.
Billy Winks is trying to outlaw our heritages. It's a cultural thing.
It's a dirty street narcotic and nothing more. I could practically feel Mort stiffen safely behind his 2-way mirror. To say muck was controversial is putting it lightly. Puppets have been using muck since the dawn of time in their religious ceremonies. Only now that they've been making waves with their civil rights crusade has it been brought into question. Its addictive qualities are undeniable. Just the mention of it sets this thing's teeth on edge. Why don't you run me through what happened? I took the photos out of the folder that was still in my hand and laid them out one by one on the table in front of it. Each picture a different angle of the same grisly scene that I knew this thing was responsible for. It looked nervous, jittery, but as with all puppets, it was hard to tell if it was sincere or if it was all a show. An attempt to make me think it felt anything at all. When I finished laying out the photos, I stopped and folded my arms, waiting for it to proceed.
Welp, I was walking down that alley and sees the man lying on the ground with the bloodies around him. I check him to see if he's breathing. When I found the bag of muck, I took it, I left.
And the gun?
I's found that too.
So let me get this straight. You found a dead man in an alleyway. You checked him, and instead of reporting it to the police, you took the muck and just happened to find a gun lying on the ground and took that too?
Yup, sir.
No. I'll tell you what happened. You met that poor schmuck to buy that muck off him, didn't you?
Nope, sir.
Oh, sure you did. Thanks to the new regulations by our favorite politician, buying muck over the counter isn't as affordable as it once was. What with all the added taxes, so you turned to buying it off the streets, didn't you? Cheap, dirty stuff that's cut with mayonnaise. But you didn't care. You needed it. Then once you showed up, there was a sudden price increase. A few more Skittles than you had in your pocket.
Nope, sir.
It was starting to crack. You couldn't let him leave with it, though. Just thinking about that sweet, thick muck matting your fur, tingling the very threads that hold you together, you couldn't let that walk away.
No.
Oh, what happened to Nope, sir? He was going to take that muck, so you shot him. You shot him in cold blood, or whatever it is that makes you things live, didn't you? Didn't you?
Yes,
It bellowed from deep within itself, so loudly that the mirror rattled in its inset home on the wall.
He wasn't gonna give it to me. We had a deal and he broke it, so I shot him.
It broke down completely, burying its face in its giant paws, its shoulders rocking up and down. Accompanying this were deep guffaws that were supposed to pass for sobs. Despite its best attempts, I wasn't fooled. No tears came. You need tear ducts to cry. I had hardly noticed that I was hunched over my end of the table, hands pressed so firmly on the cool surface that my knuckles had gone white. I stood looking down at the thing, which was continuing its obvious imitation of remorse, something it had doubtlessly picked up from some daytime soap and felt was the appropriate reaction to the current turn of events. I said nothing as I turned and walked towards the door. The thing bellowed and moaned, wiping away tears that weren't there, sniffing up snot that wasn't running out of its nose. I can only assume it was putting on the bravado performance for whomever it assumed was behind that 2-way mirror, because it knew I wasn't buying its shit. As I opened and walked through the door, leaving it to sit and ponder its own approaching mortality, I felt nothing for it except contempt. When I returned to where Mort was standing at the window, he was no longer alone. He had been joined by a puppet, a plushie. Plushies were the least detestable breed of species. They were more or less human, except, of course, for being roughly 3 feet tall and made of felt. They still lacked any of the blood or organs that made a person, so they weren't a whole lot better than the rest of them in my book. It was wearing a nicely tailored navy blue suit with a pink tie. Its green-tinted skin complemented the suit in a flattering fashion, and he sported a nicely cropped and parted salt and pepper haircut. To my knowledge, puppets weren't prone to the same vision issues as humans, so I had to assume that the horn-rimmed glasses that were perched on its bulbous orange nose were strictly for show.
Nice work in there, Detective.
It said cordially. I looked directly at Mort. Who's the plushie?
Whatever makes you things live.
Mort barked, ignoring my question completely.
And what was all that talk about muck?
I got the confession, didn't I?
My office in 10, Decker. And I mean 10.
Mort stomped off in his typically boisterous manner. The plushie, however, lingered for a moment, analyzing me, sizing me up. It nodded slightly before walking off in the same direction Mort had disappeared, towards his office. I sighed, knowing I hadn't handled the situation how the department would have liked, but there was no denying my results. I turned and gazed back through the window at the fuzzy who was still in the throes of its mock sobs. It was quite literally the definition of a monster, yet everyone was concerned about me hurting its feelings. Sometimes I don't understand what the world has become. We have managed to crawl out of the cesspool of creation, evolved into the most dominant species on the planet, make profound technological advances that we waste on sharing pictures of our ugly babies and stupid opinions that don't matter on social media, and despite all of that, I'm apparently the only one that understands that you need to be human to have humanity. Damn, I hate puppets.